What's up, team? I'm coming to you live with
This is the real
another
thing.
interview. And I'm so excited to introduce you to Louis Newman. Yes. He is one of the world's best drummers you will ever meet.
At least in this room.
An even better person.
True.
Your wit's on point.
Maybe.
And you're an even better friend.
I try to be.
So I'm so excited to sit down and talk to him today. Let's go.
It's going to be great. What do you want to talk about? Hi, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
Good. It's going to be an excellent day. We're going to come up with crazy stuff that we don't even know we're going to talk about.
Well, first, if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see my new setup, thanks to Louis.
Yeah.
I came in, the shit show was here, and he said, absolutely not.
Well, I mean, it's like, no. I have a studio out, but no, let's just put some mics up and I promise you, your editor is going to be so much more happy with it. Like, oh, we can hear things. Incredible.
Wonderful. Incredible. And I need to make out with the microphone. So
yes, get up on it.
Well, I'm thinking that the most popular question people would ask right now, wanting to know off the bat, diving in.
Cool.
People think rock and roll is sex, drugs. What's the other line?
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, and alcohol.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, in the movie Spinal Tap, I think that was best summed up that if the sex and the drugs were real, you wouldn't need the rock and roll. So that's what attracts us all to it. But no, what it ends up with is if you've ever been backstage at a major concert, you'll know it's chaos, but there's not a lot of partying. It's a lot of people working to put a very big production together in a short amount of time. And it's chaos, complete chaos absolutely. At all times. And I won't say I haven't seen some drugs and rock and roll. It's never any sex though. Never.
Everyone's celibate.
Yeah, that's it. We're monks. That's it.
It's all about the music. Mm-hmm. That's what moves you.
Pure.
Literally.
We're purists. Yeah, we are virgins to the world.
Oh my God. I love it. So when you were young, first into it, that was probably a lifestyle you saw a little bit more. How does someone young in the industry maintain that and maintain taking care of themselves mentally and physically? Or do you just push through, or what's that experience?
I think a common theme with the people I've been fortunate enough to work with and talk to is most of us just started playing music just out of love. It was just something we loved. I was really lucky. My dad's a drummer, and so there was drums in the house, and I had somebody to kind of look at and go, this is what you do, this is how it works, and made up this idea what I thought it would be. And then you just start to enjoy it, and if you get, I guess, hooked, it just becomes a thing that I could not play music. There was no way. I remember my younger years, I would skip school and I would play drums for 8 hours a day, just relentless. And then the crazy part is I'd skip school, play drums all day, and then I'd go back for band practice, which was after school. So when school let out, I just all of a sudden turn up to be in marching band or whatever. Just there, but I couldn't do anything else. And I think a lot of us have that, the creatives, when we find something we enjoy doing, you have to do it, and as far as maintaining, it just kind of happens naturally. If you're good at what you're doing, hopefully that leads into more opportunities. If you're getting less opportunities, maybe that's an opportunity to look at what am I doing wrong and reflect. I certainly had I think some of the greatest accomplishments that have ever come have been through tremendous failures of somebody just going, you suck, you're awful at this, you can't do that thing that you said you could do, and you got to go, well, shit, is that real? Oh, they're right. I actually can't do that thing that I told them I could do, and I showed up anyway. And so now I have to look at the fact that I'm a liar. And you kind of work through those. I don't know. What do you think?
Ooh, yeah. Turning it back around.
Yeah, that's what we do, right?
All right. Well, just from my own journey of becoming a doctor and then to where I am now, I think people are like, oh my God, you're an overnight success. Probably same with you in your career when they see you on stage with these people or performing or hear your stories. And it's like, yeah, that overnight success was years and years of hard work.
20 years in the making.
That you didn't see.
Yeah.
And there's lots of tears and lots of failures that you have to pick yourself back up and have the mindset of, okay, watch me. I am going to do this. Somehow it might not be in the way that I originally thought, but I'm going to do something.
Yeah. There was a quote a client shared with me the other day that I just love, and it was, anything worth doing is worth doing badly.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's so much wisdom in there. That's such a good nugget. It's like, if you're going to do anything, you got to be willing to suck at it. I don't know anybody that's just amazing at everything the second they start. Maybe there are people there. I haven't met any of them, but.
Yeah, but then I think you don't have the appreciation. Have you ever, like if you don't have a little bit of work,
you got to
struggle.
Suffer.
Yeah.
You have to suffer.
That's like, I just wrote an email for the weekly email group that I have. It's free. It's just me bullshitting, sending some stories and some thoughts. And it's off of Sigmund Freud, the pain or pleasure principle, where yes, if in order to get more pleasure in all areas of your life, you're going to have to open up and endure a little bit more pain. And so many of us live in that middle area to avoid pain, and we do anything we can to avoid pain, but then you kind of become numb and you're shutting yourself off from the pleasure and the experiences. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said. There's a lot of nuggets in that. One that is kind of popping up is, I believe complacency may be the greatest threat to mankind right now. We've all, like, life is so good right now. Even when it sucks, it's still really good. Like, especially in America, there's not very many of us that are going without in ways that other countries have to go without. I'm not saying people don't suffer here. I'm not saying there's hardships, but we just have got it framed in an unusually beautiful way here. Like, life is good if you just get out, if you work hard. Like, everything can be really great here, and a lot of people don't have that. And so like, to get back what you were saying, that balance thing of the more you suffer, the harder you work, the deeper and darker you go. It's also the more light you can see, because your representative, I guess, framework changes. The hardest thing you've ever gone through is the hardest thing you've ever gone through. And so that's your bottom. But to somebody else, they could look at that and go, come on, dude, that's nothing, So, but that complacency thing keeps popping up, at least for me, of like, if I'm not pushing all the time, I don't feel good. Like, I guess my kind of framework is mind, body, spirit. Well, where are you in those things? And that, when I look at that as like three realms of where you are, and those things can all shift at one time. And it's, where are you focusing on is all, like, if you're past, present, future studies. If you're living in the past, the only possible, this is Eckhart Tolle talks about, the only possible place you can be in your mind is in depression. It's all what I could have done, didn't do, all that kind of stuff. And then if you're focusing on the future, it's all anxiety, because you don't actually know what's going to happen. So if you're there, it's it. So
that's me mostly.
Okay. So like, it would challenge to getting back to nowness. Buddhists have a really interesting way that they talk about aimlessness, which felt really weird to me. And it was like, if we believe in this balance thing of the suffering and the light and the whole bit, how could you really have a great grasp on aim without spending time experiencing aimlessness? It's like, that's really interesting. You know what I mean? Where, if we don't just spend time going, what are all the opportunities before we focus? What can we look at? What is there? I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's really
when was the last time you were aimless?
Actually, on the boat on Saturday.
I love that. How did it feel?
It felt so freaking good. I need to do it more. And I've tried to be more intentional about that, carving out space in my schedule of turning my phone on do not disturb and actually putting it away. It'll be fine. Everyone's going to be great. And just really trying to take that breath and be in the moment. And for me, by water is always easier. Lake, even bath, shower, something, ocean, to be in that moment. There's something so healing about it.
Is it hard to do?
Oh, it's probably more challenging than me working on my hardest patient.
Do you know what I found? Similar stuff. I'm really trying to find moments of turning off. And I was doing some journaling about just how you feel about different things you do. And there was one that when I turn off, it's really uncomfortable for me for like the first hour. And being that we're both in service industries, what I came down to, I'm curious if you have the same thing. What I came down to, what it really was my fear of not being needed. I was afraid that if I wasn't answering people, that all of a sudden they'd stop. There would be no more communication. Then I wouldn't have value. And I was like, whoa.
Oh, I definitely can relate to that 1,000%.
It's scary, right? It's just like mind games. Why does the human brain?
And then it goes to, well, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And back to that.
Why?
I don't know.
Why are we looking for that? Like, it's like the world is hard enough, and yet we're constantly putting our own roadblocks up and trying to come up with ways to bring ourselves down.
And we've never been shown that with it. Let's just speak careers. I mean, obviously personal lives too. Like we've never been shown that no one's going to not need us or that we're not good enough.
Right.
In fact, it's pretty much the opposite.
Yeah.
But my mind is choosing to mind fuck me.
Yeah.
And make me anxiety and freak out of that.
And why?
Like, I don't know. You tell me, Louis.
Well, man, I can't remember where I learned this, but somebody came that human beings only do anything they do is for two reasons: it's to increase pleasure or to decrease pain.
Back to the principle.
Yeah. So what with every situation, if you're trying to figure it out, I'm defaulting back to, am I looking to increase pleasure with this, or am I looking to avoid pain in some way? I think it might be Tony Robbins that turned that on there. And I was like, that's an interesting concept, because we have a tendency when we get in these difficult situations to make it more complicated. And that's, if you can just go to okay, why am I drinking too much at the moment? Am I increasing pleasure? Yeah, but I'm also decreasing pain. And it's, so then then we're back into balance. And I think what it all comes down to is finding that balance in your life of mind, body, spirit, good versus evil. You could put it up to everything, suffering and enjoy,
Yeah. So what in your career, was there something that happened in your career or life that drove you to even start doing this work? A lot of people, it's scary. It's hard. It's really self-reflecting on yourself. You're not going to always like what pops up, such as I need to be needed and some of this other stuff, because I've gone through it a little bit too. So I understand. But what was the moment where you're like, shit, I need to work on myself and figure this out?
I think, at first I always go back to the building blocks as a kid. And I moved to England when I just turned 16, I think. And my dad drove me down to Atlanta, and I just got on a plane, and I had a couple pairs of clothes and a drum kit I'd put in a case, and I was just going to England, and I went and lived with my brother for a few months. And then after that, I was pretty much just living in London. And I think what it all came down to was you throw yourself into all these situations, and the only way you realize that you need to do work is when you just get stumped. And back to the complacency thing, if you're not constantly challenging and putting yourself in things that are really uncomfortable and hard to do, how do you ever know what your limit is? How do you ever know when it gets hard? And I think then you're also more apt to let other people tell you what you can and can't do and define your own values. But if you're constantly pushing through that, and if I'm honest, I'd gotten in there was some potential legal trouble that I was getting in when I was about 15. And I knew I wanted to play drums, and I was like, I know I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm just going to bail. I'm out. Yeah. So I went across.
So fun. You taught me how to use them.
So my solution to that was to move across the world. And I guess what I should say is what I've learned is everything that we believe in life is we come up with this storyline of whatever, you can dream whatever you want. And I had dreamed that happiness lived in this version of success that I believed as a 15, 16-year-old. And then I went around to find evidence that it existed. And then I built this story that was, if I can go play on big stages, if I can play drums professionally, and if I can make some money, then I'll be happy. And so then, as those things started to happen, and it was really long journey. When I went to England, I was gigging as much as possible, but I was also working as a carpenter's laborer, just hauling up stuff, working as a brick hod. You just put, bricks on your shoulder, and it was tough. And then at night I'd go play gigs because they weren't paying anything yet. Nobody knew who I was or what I was. So you just do it. Right. And then it was okay, you get to a certain amount of success, and it's okay. And the success meter is interesting because it's always moving, isn't it? It's it doesn't matter where you are.
Yep. I know.
So then you get to this thing. I was like, I'm still not happy. And so then I think the natural thing is people go after sex, money, power. So what is it? What do you go through? And then most people lead themselves down those things. I think it's also fair to say that most people never really turn around at some point and go, am I actually happy? You know what I mean? You see it. People they're going after sex and they're thinking this is the thing I want. And they've got all the lovers they want, but they're
empty.
They're empty. And I know, fortunately, I've been blessed to meet some really interesting humans, and a lot of them have had a lot of financial wealth. And a lot of them talk about it. That wasn't where it is. The ones that have found the happiness, it wasn't in the money. And those that have found power, and whatever that version of power is, that's not it either. And so the more life you live, I guess the more times you get punched in the face, and eventually hey, the only way I'm going to find happiness is by making me enough. There's no outside thing I can get. There's no car. There's no house. There's no nothing that I can buy. It's got to be a wholeness within me. Does any of that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. And it is crazy. Oh, good job. Good job. Cheers to you. We're drinking in
Perfect
from Italy when we were over there. Chianti Classico.
By the way.
Yeah, I mean we're big winos.
Cool sun lines coming in.
I know you're gonna look really.
We're gonna get you in a movie studio eventually, and it'll all look really good.
This is gonna get big someday.
This is huge.
I mean, this is gonna be huge. Yeah. Speaking of, let's check to make sure it's recording. Perfect. I have PTSD since I've done a couple interviews and had to redo them.
That's fantastic. But you learned a couple ways of how to not do an interview.
And one was one of my hockey players from Canada, and he had to. Well, luckily he was coming back. But
fantastic.
That was really convenient.
I promise it'll be really easy. And we'll have to do it twice. I didn't tell you that part, but it's.
Thank you. So speaking of all that and struggling with that, I had a patient really early on in my career in the office, and she was high level exec of a huge company that you would all know. And she told me early on, she's like, Audra, you're going to be so successful. I can feel it. She's like, but just so you know, I know you're worried about paying the rent for the office right now. Because I mean, it is hard in the beginning with anything you do and any risk you take. You're not sure. It's kind of a gamble, which is part of the high. She's like, but just so you know, like you think once you pay your rent and you're going to be, she's like, it's just going to get more and more and more. Your bills get bigger. She's like, so I want to make sure that you take time and take care of you and figure out what you actually want. And that was just so awesome. And like in the moment, I didn't really capture that as much, but years later, it's still in my head of, okay, what is it you want? What is it you and Josh want? What does that look like? And that can change, which is cool. But since you're friends with lots of famous people and you work for lots of famous people, do you see them struggling with stuff like this?
I think, yeah. And it's all at the, I guess, perspective levels. I've got a friend of mine once who went to see one of the concerts, and there I believe was 17,000 people in the audience, and all they could focus on was the 1,000 or so tickets that didn't sell that would have brought it to the sellout. And I was like, how do we do that? And I was like, that was just at such a huge level that was put into perspective. And I was like, but we all do that. We're all looking at that 1% or that 0.5% or that insignificant thing to build down the bigger piece of the puzzle. And I think truly well-rounded people have figured out how to navigate that in a different way. But yeah, I've noticed fame, money, power, all of it. These are human characteristics, with a couple exceptions that I'm currently researching. There seems to be beauty and joy in simplicity. And unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, because they don't know any different. When you look at like cultures of third world people that don't have the money and the resource and everything, they have great bond to their family. And like if you've ever been down to like a remote part of Mexico, they'll be washing their clothes in the river, making tortillas. The kids are playing, and then you look over and they're just beaming with joy. And I'm thinking, wait a second, I've just paid thousands of dollars to come on this boat ride to do the whole thing, and I'm not that happy.
Nope, I agree.
Why aren't I happy?
Yeah.
You should be. I need to switch with you. And it's funny is like as they look at us, all on this big tourist thing, they don't want what I have.
Mm-hmm.
I want what they have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why? What is it? And it's that peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's by design, or I don't know if we're just creatures of want and creatures of nature, but we seem to have that want all the time. But where we go to find it aren't the places it can be.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I'm at the moment leaning really hard into faith.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be one of the very few ventures I've ever delve into that is like, oh, this has got some meat on it. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's not the car, it's not the house, it's not the bank account, it's the nothing. And it's literally, it's the nothing. It's that moment of silence where I'm just sitting there talking to God, going, what do you want from me? How can I be of service? And that feels like the kind of work you could lean into. And that's free, you know. But I was saying, if I can feel this joy and this contentment with nothing, like I've seen exists in a lot of different places. And where are we now? I mean, we're more connected than we've ever been, but we have worse connections. You know what I mean? Like,
scrolling. Everyone's addicted to your phone.
Addicted. You go out to a restaurant, you see they're not even talking to each other. So why are you even here?
Yep.
And that's sad.
And people don't know how to have the in-face conversations.
Yeah. Why?
Because our phones, it's easier. Well, I don't have Snapchat, but the younger generation that I treat, like, they just snap each other and stuff, but then they don't want to go have a real conversation.
When do you think we'll look at it and go, this isn't working? Because when you look at the rise of suicide rates, I believe it's from somewhere in the age of like 12 to 22, like that is they're skyrocketing. Kids of the young, like they don't want to be here. Why? They're lacking connection, right? We're not talking to them anymore. They don't know how to talk. They feel lost. They feel lonely.
So then I think they're not outside moving and being outside and being able to move their bodies. That alone statistically has shown moving, and like we were all outside playing and doing stuff as kids, that makes you happy. And not just sitting inside on video games, tablets, phones, all the things. I mean, even when I do it so much or watch or eat, I do love binging every once in a while, but you are like kind of depressed.
Yeah.
Because you're just so focused on that screen and that overstimulation and everything.
I'm curious, when you're doing that, and like, because it becomes like it's kind of mind numbing just to jump into a show, and then your body just goes into veg. Do you also overeat when you do that? Like when I start doing that, I'm like, I need 3 cheeseburgers, fries, and 17 milkshakes. This will be the only thing that'll make me happy at this point.
That's a good question.
Because I feel you've already abandoned yourself, right?
Yeah,
you've already just, screw it, I'm out.
Yeah.
And so then I just go all the way. If I'm going to go down the hole, let's hit the bottom.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I can relate to that. Huh. I mean,
and why?
Cheeseburger sounds good.
Yeah, delicious. I go over the top. God, I love to eat.
Oh my God.
I'm at some point in my life, I'm going to be 700 pounds.
What's your favorite food?
Yes. I'm a huge fan of Indian food. I could have Indian food every day. My body, not so much a fan of it, but I
like the cleanse.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love a really strong chicken vindaloo, which is very spicy. I can't do it anymore. So now I go for the chicken tikka masala, just like everybody else. And I seem to get away with it. And that's it. What's your favorite food?
I like a good steak and a cheeseburger.
Okay.
I'm definitely salty more than sweet.
Wow. Jennifer Aniston or Jennifer Hudson?
I mean, I always like my girl Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah, she's the better of the Jennifers, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's my favorite Jennifer,
she's
too.
like a badass.
Yeah.
And she's just in every freaking movie. And I don't even know movies. That's what people, if we're going down a movie train, I'm out.
Yeah.
Everyone's, you don't know who anyone is and you don't know any movies. How are we supposed to talk to you? I'm like, listen, I can Google after the appointment. I can Google who you're talking about this story.
I will find this out. I will find this out. Hey, do you feel like because you spent such a long time in the education system, what do you feel you missed out on?
Ooh, I love this.
Come on.
Can we just start our own podcast now?
Totally.
I feel like that's coming. At least a multiple series.
Like, I think for me being pretty uneducated, like I look at you and go, wow, they did the thing I didn't. So I'm curious because I feel like I missed out on stuff. What do you feel you missed out on?
Oh, I missed out on a lot at what I perceive. Like, I went to school in Chicago after Ohio State for the higher education doctorate degree. And all I did was wake up, study, go to school, come work out, maybe come back, study. On the weekends, I was over certifying myself in seminars because I had that drive to be the best. I was also a Jack Daniel's shot girl, but it was because it paid $25 an hour and I could do the tips. So I could go at night and do that for 2 to 3 hours and then go back to study. So I just feel like I didn't have a life all those years. It was just so competitive and so brutal to find a way to survive. But at the same time, in my head, it was like, well, I want to be the best and I want to get out of this. There's lights at the end of the tunnel. But people ask me today, because I'm obsessed with my job, and I hope you feel it too when I'm working. Like, I would not want to do anything else. Like, I do love it. But even if someone offered me a lot of money, I would not trade those years of my life again to redo it.
Did you ever want to quit?
Oh, yeah.
What'd that feel like?
Because I didn't feel like I was good enough. I wasn't the smartest in our class that was going to cure cancer. And then everyone had that energy, the cutthroat energy, but you're with each other all the time. I don't know. It felt lonely.
Interesting. So you're in this classroom full of the brightest, smartest healers of the world, lonely.
It's kind of like what people say when they're in a bad marriage of like, that's the loneliest I've ever been.
Yeah.
When they can't connect.
Laying next to somebody that you're not connected with. How'd you push through?
Well, even though I'll never admit this to my husband, I'm stubborn as shit. Okay. If I really, it takes me a while, but if I actually set my mind to something, I'm not going to fail. I will find a way to make it work. But I have to be committed first.
Commitment's an interesting thing. I think I seem to talk to quite a few clients about like being motivated and stuff and keeping the motivation. And I think what you've just lined out is perfect. Like, do you know a guy named David Goggins? Yeah. So Goggins talks a lot about habit. You know what I mean? And he's going, if you're relying on motivation, well, you're screwed. Motivation is going to be, I'm going to become a runner. And then you go to the door and you go running for a few days, but then it starts raining. And you're like, I'm not a runner anymore because it's raining. Whereas somebody who's got discipline goes, okay, it's raining outside. I guess I'm going to get wet, or I guess I better get a raincoat and I'm just going to make it happen. So where did you like find the discipline? Because the motivation was gone. You know what I mean? You felt lonely. It sucked. That was horrible. So why keep going at all? What was the discipline factor?
Well, first, before I answer this, they should know your second job. Because they're probably like, how does he know all this stuff?
I don't know anything. I'm just talking to my buddy.
So just say that first, and then I'll go into that.
Recently, I've become an ontological coach, which we'll talk about in a bit. Ontology is the study of being. So it's what mind, body, spirit stuff of why are we how we are, which has been fascinating. I've done years of therapy and seen many a psychiatrist and done 12-step work through ACA for coming from an alcoholic family. So it's like I've really enjoyed that work. And then I decided I wanted to do it professionally. It was about a year and a half ago. You were with us. What was that? Yeah. A little over a year, right?
Yeah, I was going to say at least a year and a half.
So then I went to school for it, and it's been great. Anyway, back to you.
Back to me. I feel like, well, first, my dad is the picture of discipline, always working hard, but as jolly as he could be, always. So I think I had that example growing up. Like, he wasn't shy about saying like, hey, you're going to have to work hard. This isn't going to come easy, whatever you want to do in life, but you can do it. So I think I always had that in the back of my head. And then with my stubbornness, if someone tells me I can't do something, that's motivation for me to be disciplined and show them I could. And I had multiple people like, oh, you're actually smart. You're kind of pretty. Like, you should probably use that. Why don't you go do pharmaceutical sales or something? And it's just, what's that reverse? Like, oh, that seems like it's a bad thing. You're saying it's not a bad thing. It's whatever. It's just people's opinions, but you can use them to fuel you of them saying you can't do something.
Why medicine? Like, why did you choose, like, what attracted to you? Was it the healing?
Yeah, I think always, like, I always like taking care of people, but I've had strep throat every other month from like first to third grade when I got my tonsils out. So I was out of school for about a week and I was at the doctor's all the time. So I just loved, for some reason, that vibe. I mean, oh my God, that's the pediatrician. So I would come home when I was sick and play in the guest room with my animals and my Barbies and pretend to be doctor.
Yeah.
I danced, you know, all through
Yeah.
school. So I obviously wanted to do that at some point, but financially that probably wasn't going to work long term in your short career.
Yep.
I don't know. Science was always easier for me. English is my worst language, but it's the only one I know. My testing was always lower in that as I'm doing a podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just always like, I love helping people. The high of that is indescribable. Probably how you feel when people come up to you about your music and coaching, like how much you're changing their lives. It's just like
service, isn't it? There's something about it. It feels, I think it's the natural place we're supposed to think about. If everybody on the planet was in service, like if all of us just walked around
wanting to help each other.
How can I help you? What gift do I have that I could share with you? Now I'm curious as well, how did you navigate into chiropractic and why?
So I was pre-med exercise science at Ohio State. Knew I wanted to be a doctor, but did not know what kind. I'd never even been to a chiropractor. They were known as quacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But down there, the girls in the sorority that was older than me was graduating, and she worked at this chiropractic office and was like, hey, you know, you should probably go interview there. Think you would be a good fit and you're able to be hands-on and pretty active. And I was just like, aren't chiropractors weirdos? She's like, no, they practice very much like hands-on sports, not what you think of as a normal rack and crack chiro. And I was like, okay. So I went in the interview, got offered the job. So I took it.
Nice.
But it turns out he's one of the greatest mentors ever. And he would ask what I was learning in school, and like on lunch break and stuff, he would apply it to what he was having me do with patients. And like through that, I was able to learn so much. I'd shadowed a couple surgeons. Like I knew that I had to do my research. So I like put myself in those positions and like to shadow others to see where I felt I would fit. I also always wanted to be the boss. That is a huge thing of like, I know I'm motivated enough. Like I don't need someone to motivate me.
Yeah.
So it just kind of fell in place. He was like, have you ever thought about this? You could specialize however you want to specialize. And I'm like, And I weighed it out, the pros and cons. And then it's just kind of like one of those things, like my gut kept telling me, you should go do this. You could change the world is my vision, but change lives and help so many people and do it your way. And so I kind of fell into it that way.
Well, your way is better. It really is. I'm not kidding. I've had, without exaggerating, I've had somewhere around a dozen chiropractors in my life. And to be honest, the majority of the treatments that they gave me have been very superficial. I felt a little bit better after the treatment, and then it would kind of go away. Your method was really interesting because you treated I think was it my tennis elbow that we first started working on? You treated the tennis elbow, which had immediate results, and then came up with a plan that actually fixed all of the core issues. And then the thing that was crazy is it worked. I'm going to have to get one, but it worked. And then I thought what was even more intriguing like that is you treated me I think maybe 3 times for that particular issue. And then I found if I just did what you told me, which I don't think I did the first time, which is probably why I needed the other treatment.
Hey, that's a common thing. Sometimes you don't hear me because we're having so much fun.
Sure. No, but then it works. And what I love about what you're doing in your thing is it is truly service, because if you teach me how to take care of myself, that's probably not what's best for you. You know what I mean? But that's what's best for your client and for your patient. And I'm doing the same thing with coaching. Is like somebody will come with me. They'll either be in a emotional crisis, career crisis, relationship crisis, whatever it is. Unfortunately, we don't usually look for help until we're in crisis. And I wish it were the other way around.
True. It's so true because it's so much easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody is broken in some way before they come to you. And then like if you come to me complete, like then we can just start moving forward. But it, it's like eventually, like on the coaching thing, it's usually a 3-6 month program or something, and then you're graduated. You know, it's like we've solved your problem for you. What I love with that, similar to your model, is it's like it's really serving. It's like I'm not building a. We hope to have a few long-term clients, but it's like really, if people are probably going to weave in and out of your life, you give them the best you can out of it in hopes that they tell other people about you and it comes in. And so, to get back to my very, very long-winded question, you could easily have built maybe a different model that would, you're going to get this client list and you're going to keep them for life. Why did you choose to find out? Because I know we've talked about this, extreme expense more than anybody else does. I mean, like, I know what you spend on getting continued education to make sure that your clients are getting the best, which is why it works, rather than just going the traditional route that it seems most people do. And I think that might also be why, like, chiropractic gets a weird rap at times.
It
Like,
does. It really
so
does.
what, like, why did you decide to be different?
Have you met me? I am different.
You sure are. Yes.
See, people think I'm not funny, specifically Josh.
I think you're very funny.
No, I'm
Josh
hilarious.
was wrong. Okay.
Yeah, hear that when you listen to this, Josh.
This may be the first time he's been wrong, but he's wrong. I think you're very funny.
No, it's just that whole, like, my drive has always been to help people, help people, help people. It is just, and part of it selfishly because it is such a high. But I also have been one of those people, I have to look myself in the mirror every day. And there's just no way, if I felt a little icky about it, that I could do it. I don't care if it was financially easier, probably. It's just, God, that pit in your stomach. And even just talking about it, like, my throat has a lump. That is just not who I am or who I strive to be as a person, professionally or personally. So I couldn't honestly look at someone and say that was the best mode of treatment for them and recommend it. So
where do you think your ethics meter pops up that others don't? Because I mean, we're in a time in life where it just seems nobody gives a shit about anything. You know what I mean? Like, if you talk to anybody in any type of customer service, it's like they don't want to help at all.
Yeah, it actually is.
And yet you're super serving. And just for the listening viewers, I know a lot of clients Audra works on, and they all have similar results. Like, it works. It's a thing. So I like, what's the superpower?
Part of it, I don't think I'm smarter than other people. I think I might just care more.
Yeah. You care more. You've created a small business with enough clients to it's a good business, but it's not overwhelming to where you can sit down and talk to people.
Yeah, I've cultivated in a way that,
is it overwhelmed? Are you
overwhelmed? Yeah, well, because I overwork all the time.
I said, and you overwork all the time.
And I haven't said, I'm learning the word no.
Yeah.
It's hard because
it's tough,
especially when you love people. Like, hey, I can't work 12 hours that day. Like, I've made myself sick multiple times. Like, I'm healing from that right now, of burnout, essentially.
What do you think? Is that codependence?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Where's that come from? Who's that? Is that your mom? That your dad? Is that Audra, scared Audra in medical school?
All of it, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's multiple factors. Like, you get over one and something else pops and triggers it out.
Yeah. Where do you strive for, like, wholeness now? What fills Audra up?
Work. No, but I am working on it. It is actually like some stillness. Like, I have really been intentional, the boat, or in the morning going on the deck and just enjoying my cup of coffee with the dog. Yeah. Like, there is something so peaceful in that. And the more I'm taking care of myself, the more the business is growing and doing kind of what I envisioned, or whatever I change my mind to do.
It's law of attraction, really, isn't it? Like, when you everybody, especially, and I think it's global, but everybody's looking for peace. Like, we are just we're in just turmoil most of the time. I think COVID was actually a really interesting time for most people, because it gave everybody 30 seconds to just take a breath and go, once the initial panic was over, and like, it's like, okay, well, we're going to be here for a while.
We're good.
Okay, cool. I don't have to go to work. Okay. And I just played video games for like a week straight, did nothing. I was like, that's fun, but that's not.
Then you get over it. Yep.
But it was that moment to now where we're all looking of, gosh, I really need to make some time for me, some time where that peace comes, I like, for me, that was the first time I was able to truly have no excuses and like get into, I have a pretty specific morning routine, but to really dive into what does that look like? You know what I mean? What gives purpose? What is it? Who am I? What am I? What is this whole meaning of life and everything when you remove the work element? Of like, especially for us in the entertainment business, my wife's in entertainment as well, is we're not working. So what are we doing? We decided to buy a camper and went camping, which was amazing.
So you purposely secluded yourself to relax.
Yes. Which was even more bizarre. Everybody's buckling down. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
We're getting out of here.
Yep. I love it.
It was amazing. It really was that.
Talk about peaceful. No one's out there.
Oh, man. We went to like all the national parks and half of them were shut down, which was bizarre. It was all chaos at first. Like, wait, here's the most open space in the world and it's closed. Why is this closed? But we made the best of it. And it was that moment of we need peace. And if we look at everything as everything's a trigger of, for example, like I look at my dog Earl and he makes me so joyful. I don't know, was he in here?
No,
he didn't come in, did he? But really, it's not Earl making me joyful. He doesn't have the Louis joy button. It's me. I allow Earl to trigger my joy. And so what if we took responsibility for all of our emotions all the time and all of our feelings and everything that we ever come in, we know is a trigger, and then started to go, well, I'd like to trigger that. Earl can trigger joy. Why can't I trigger joy? My wife can trigger love. Why can't I trigger love? And when you start to connect those things, you realize you can. You know what I mean? And then we get into that wholeness. But again, there has to be for me, it's just a must. I don't know how else to put it. It's that discipline piece again of, if you're not finding that morning coffee and that meditation or whatever it is that brings you to that center, you just become chaotic in your mind, your body, your spirit, all of it. And that's where you see people get out of whack completely, either completely nuts in their mind. Obesity in this country is just at an epidemic. Well, why? Because it makes us feel good. We don't feel good. And McDonald's is delicious.
Especially their Coke. It's one of a kind.
I get it. We feel good. I've struggled with my weight most of my life. And it becomes that if everything else is going shitty, man, Snickers bars are always delicious.
That's true.
They just are.
They just are. So here's a question
Snickers,
for you.
Sponsor us.
Yeah, seriously. So here's a question for you. Can you tell the difference when you play at night, when you actually had you were good in your morning routine versus when you weren't that day?
Oh, God.
And what's that like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yes. When I have done my musts, I've got a list of musts. And when I've done my musts, I start the day with like this feeling of accomplishment already. And a lot of what I call my squirrel mind has been put at bay. So now I can focus on really being creative. And I find I don't show up on stage in ways that I would had I not done the work. What I mean by that is, like, I play drums, right? So I'm in the back. I am a foundational instrument.
Oh, for sure.
So I need to focus on foundation. Whereas if I haven't found the space and the time in other ways, I find I start to do it on my gig, which means maybe I overplay, I rush stuff, I don't sit where I should be. And it becomes more about selfish rather than selfless. If I'm really doing my job, I need to be, everybody else on stage has to have a higher importance than I do. And I've got to be looking at, how am I supporting you? Am I stepping on your toes? And so, like, when I'm at my best, I've given me a good hug. You know what I mean? I've done all the self-work. I've taken good care of me. So now when I show up professionally, I can be truly of service, and I can be available to do those things, to listen, to truly listen and truly be with someone else and be vulnerable, which I think is scary to somebody. You get a critique. Could you do this more? You don't get offended by it.
Yep.
You just go, sure.
Yeah, why not? You're trying to help me, not hate on me.
Yeah, let's make this as great as we can be, and I value you.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of turns into environments sometimes. If you're really reflecting, if you get into environments where you're getting triggered, leave. You know what I mean? When I walk into a room, if I'm not looking around going, I want to be the best I can for you right now, I need to get out of that room as fast as possible, because I'm wasting everybody's time and energy and embarrassing myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to give you my best.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm out then.
Yeah. No, I think that's
a big thing, man. Toxic environment.
Oh, huge. So what are a couple of your musts that you'd like to share with everyone?
I'm huge into gratitude. Mm-hmm. Like, immediately, my first thing I do when I wake up is I gratitude list. I used to do a gratitude journal. Now I do most of this in my mind. I dealt with a lot of resentment through my life. I didn't know I was carrying so much of it. Resentment was described as you taking poison and expecting your enemy to die. You know what I mean? You're sitting and I'm sure you see this impatience of, like, it shows up in your body. Oh, yeah. For me, it was showing up as excess weight, or like I noticed my shoulders would hurt, and like it would just get, it was bad. And it was like, it was a very real thing. And everybody goes, come on, no, you did something. I was like, no, man, it was an emotional thing living in me that manifested itself into sickness in the body. So gratitude, like I just start with that antidote immediately. Then I usually go into prayer. And a lot of that prayer is in surrender and gratitude as well. It's being thankful for where I am, accepting of situations, and forgiveness. You know what I mean? It's that. That's hard. Yeah, and it's really hard. Because it requires vulnerability, right? And not only forgiving if you're mad at someone, but forgiving yourself. Yeah. Oh, that's the worst. I'm working on that. Tough. Yeah. I screwed up. I did that. I know I did that. Cool. I'll learn from it. The lesson is there, and my bad on me. It's tough, though. It's so much easier just to go, that person did that thing to me, and that's on them. No, it's, if we accept all things happen to us for whatever reason it may be, then from there, I'll either go into like a guided meditation or just some breath work. Breathing into your butthole. What's that? Breathing into your butthole. Yes. Yeah. And seriously, like, that is, I know. If you can, that's your pelvic floor. That's everything. You got to have it. And it calms you down instantly. Yes. I don't remember what friend it was, but there was like an ancient, I believe, oh, I'm going to screw this up. Don't call me on this. I know this is going to be inaccurate, but the story will remain. And it was like an ancient Muslim or something had a chance to talk to God and asked what his name was. And he replied with like, ha, or something like that. And then as the story goes on, what we learn is ha is the sound of breathing. He's in our breath. He's at our very core. What are we? We're one breath in. We're one breath out. Like that's God. True. That's everything. Everything is in that energy. And so when I really spend time in breath, like, that's where we get that clarity. I've been a huge one that just seems to reset me is I finish my showers cold. Sometimes I'll just take cold ones to start with. We're getting ready to move, and I've got to get an ice bath. Like, it's going to happen. Hot and cold, man, that lymphatic system, moving it around. Detoxing. It matters. It does. And I find on the days that I'll do it versus the days I don't, they're different days. And that's the only thing, like, life's going to come at you one way or another. And then I just try to point at doing one thing that's hard every day. Doesn't matter what it is. And that some days that'll be a mental challenge. Some days it'll be a physical challenge. I was studying jujitsu up until about a couple months ago. And that I found just incredibly impactful. Incredible. That was like the biggest chess game I'd ever gone to, and we're moving now. And then I got to find another gym. I broke my toe was what, God, that sounds so weak. My toe. Oh, ow. That's huge. Because that's your power off to like propel forward and everything. But it was like getting in a room with people who could legitimately kill you. And like, I couldn't believe, I remember rolling around with a woman who was older than me, half of my size. And she broke me in ways I've never been broken. I think I remember the exercise.
Mentally, physically, emotionally.
Oh my God. I was just broken. And the exercise was essentially I had her in a very compromising position where I had advantage in all of this. And she was a brown belt. I'm a white belt. And then I looked at her and I said, "Are you ready?" And she just kind of smirked. And I was like, "Oh, I know.
You're going down.
I'm in trouble." And
I kept my mouth shut.
I gave her everything I could. And I think within about 2 minutes, she had broken my ankle, pulled my arm out of socket, choked me out twice. And then she said something to me. She said, you mistake strength for power.
Oh.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's really, because I'm just muscling. It's all I got. I don't know anything. So I'm just exercising essentially. And she was very relaxed. It was like, it felt like wrestling a marshmallow of like, no matter what I did, she just gently would move herself in a different position. And before I knew it, she had choked me out again and again. And but that humbling piece was so good. I'm very fragile, really. We're fighting, but I'm learning that I'm fragile.
And that was your hard.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Different lessons each day, man.
But looking at it like that, or that it's a fun adventure, totally changes your perspective, including if you're having a bad day. For me, if I'm like, oh, things aren't going my way or how I pictured, everything's getting scattered, whatever it may be. If I'm like, oh, well, this is part of the journey, the roller coaster, the fun, like it's going to turn out better than you imagined. Instant shift.
Yep.
Instant shift.
I think it's just fascinating. Like the more you start to learn and do things like something like jiu-jitsu is a great example of like, we all have trauma, right? And in whatever form it comes in, some of us have got deep trauma, some of us, but it's all relative to us. So somebody who's had the most privileged life still has trauma. You know what I mean? Because that's just the human condition. That's the way we go through it. And what we've learned over the years is trauma lives in the body. Everybody seems to address it by going to therapists, psychiatrists, medication, whatever. And I'm not saying that's not helpful stuff, but at the root of it, trauma is living in your body. I've even read some studies that were interesting. It said trauma lives in your lungs. So you find people with deep trauma get bronchial infections.
And grief.
Yes.
That's Chinese medicine. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I'd love to hear. We're going to talk. That's my next question to you.
Oh, God. Okay. Maybe that's in part 2, because that's really deep.
When people come in to me and we're talking about being in crisis, and pretty soon we start talking about either childhood trauma or whatever. And then you usually find they're all inactive as well. And it's like, if you're not that basic piece, you got to move. If you're not moving, that trauma is going to come into every other realm of your world. Move. If you do nothing else, I think probably Joe Rogan or something was talking about, if you're having a shitty day and just feeling bad, go swing a kettlebell for 5 minutes. You will feel different. Your world will change.
Go outside and walk.
And it works.
It works.
Just
every
get up,
time.
go do something. Tell me more about Chinese medicine.
Oh, I feel like that's going to have to be a part 2. It's really deep. But through these things, different emotions are stored different spots in your body. So, like, without giving away too much, because I feel like we have to.
Of the secret.
Yeah. But grief is stored in your lungs, like anger, liver. And that's why, with RM techniques, not only treating like the actual injury of your elbow, but what else were we doing when we were hanging out? We're talking about your life, your stress, trying to get in there and navigate to change your mindset a little bit without maybe you knowing it, and your attitude towards your injury. You're going to get better. It's not going to be the end of the world. So getting the correct treatment, mindset, and then you've talked about it so much already, but breathing. That's so important. I mean, I hold my breath all the time, I notice. That is costing you stability right there. You're not breathing. And then in Chinese medicine, you're not moving your qi. You're holding everything stagnant. So the qi can't flow through you. It's just a very interesting, it's an ancient practice that has so much applicability with Western medicine and molding the two together. It has been really cool to see.
Why do you think we don't do more of that? Like, why don't the two, because there's so much wisdom in both, like modern medicine is incredible, but ancient wisdom is also incredible.
You're going to make me say it.
I want to hear you say it.
We are controversial. Money. It's not a drug. It's not an easy fix.
You can't make money off it.
That, and all of us want the pill. I mean, I find myself every once in a while too. Like, I mean, we want the easy fix.
Yeah.
And if you want to be truly fixed, you're going to have to work at it. It's not, the pill's not the only answer.
Man, it's a shame. There's a really cool Netflix show on you might want to watch, because I find when I do watch TV, I usually find something interesting. I don't know. I'm always, I've got to read or do something that I feel I'm learning from. But it's this show all about the blue zones, which are all people that live past 100.
Mm-hmm.
And what are their connections? Some of the connections are really interesting, but all of them are hard lives. There was one measurement they looked at where it's like the steepness. There was this one area in like Italy or something where, like, if you live there, you're walking up like lots of flights of stairs all day because there's no other choice. Like, you got to go down and get you, like, you're working and there's no other way. And eating in a squat, you know what I mean? Their bodies just stay more aligned and better. And it was like that. It's like there's some wisdom in there in how they eat and what they eat and the way that they put it all together. They're growing all their food. And the family unit, like the connection, I thought was phenomenal. And there's so much to be said when it comes to that connection thing. We're all looking for that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like your kids. It can be chosen family of friends and everything else. I think it's just finding those people that aren't causing toxic in your life, that you can have real vulnerable conversations to feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
And I think, like, the step thing, I think we're also really obsessed with looking at our freaking watches, seeing how many steps we got. Oh, it has to be 10,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
How about just doing it till it feels good?
Yeah.
Or doing something that feels good and just being like, my body feels good. Like, I don't have to obsess. It's just another thing, which I think there's metrics that are good sometimes. And I think every once in a while we may need to gauge something. But also I think there's just a little too much emphasis on, oh, it has to be this much. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all become so much work. Like, everything's work. And what if your life was just of that? I'm just going to go walk in the woods. Well, why? Because walking in the woods is awesome.
It is.
It's awesome. I'm going to go find an interesting hike. And
just don't get a tick.
Yeah. No, I mean, there was
I'm going to check you for ticks.
So true. I'm sure I got a couple.
Josh had one the other day after he was done hunting. I was like, are you kidding me, man? You didn't even check yourself?
I've got a friend of mine. He got bit by a tick. Now he can't eat meat anymore. That's a real thing.
Josh knows someone too.
Oh my God. Couldn't imagine going out the steak. I took two of my good friends. We went and hiked Fall Creek Falls this week.
So pretty.
Man, I was like, this needs to be part of everybody's life. Let's just get up and go walking for a few hours. At the end of this walk, there's this beautiful waterfall. And man, we talked about life, and it was great. I was like, this is what we need.
Yes.
Watching as we can't tell, I'm constantly reading, watching, learning.
Yeah, I love it. Interesting conversations.
And I believe it was a TED talk, and this guy, he's talking about the connection thing, and he equates it with addiction, which I thought was really interesting. And like, the takeaway is we think of the opposite of addiction as sobriety, and it's not. The opposite of addiction is connected. And I thought that was very interesting, because he says what happens with people is when you don't have connection, you're going to find it one way or another. And when you know anybody that's been a true drug addict, alcoholic, or whatever, they are connected to that. They're bonded to that thing. Why? Because it shows up for them. It makes them feel good. It gives them what they're lacking. You know what I mean? Every time. It's the drug epidemic with fentanyl, I find, is just horrific. But I was in Vegas not too long ago. I'm walking around, and they seem to they've got an issue with it going on. But the people walking around, like, you think they're dangerous, and they don't want anything more than more fentanyl.
Right.
Because they feel good. They're like, they feel completed. And essentially he goes on and does this thing, and he talks about this study of Rat Park that was done in the 20s, I believe. I'm sure this will be wrong. Don't call me out if I'm wrong. It doesn't matter.
It's a podcast.
But they found that, like, when they gave these rats all these drugs, essentially when they were lonely, they would take this cocaine water, and they would essentially OD and been dead in a very short amount of time. But when they put them in the same situation with plenty of other rats and wheels and things to do, they didn't even touch the cocaine water. They didn't want any of it because they were connected.
Hmm.
For example, you and I could very easily each plow through a couple bottles of wine before we started, but we didn't.
No.
Why? Because we want to be here.
Yeah. And we were catching up and just,
Right.
yeah.
It was, we could choose to be out of our mind, but we're not.
Mm-mm.
We want to be here. I want to be present. And so what the study goes on to show is like when probably our way of like doing a intervention where like somebody who's at their lowest, getting them in a room with their closest people and telling them that they suck is probably not the greatest way we could handle that. I think that's going to end up getting relooked at over time. Whereas instead is you give them ways to connect. You give them ways to show up. You give them ways to participate in their own life so that they can then be connected again, because they're connected. They're totally connected to the bottle or the pill or the one thing. And I don't do a lot of addiction work just because I've got triggers for me. It's not a good place for me to work. But what I have learned is like addiction's scary because I honestly don't think I can tell you the difference between an addict and a demonic possession at times. It's like that bottle or that pill or whatever has got them. It's got them and it's all they want. And it's like, and trying to get it out of their hands and out of their grasp. It's like, there's a demon holding them for sure.
So what do you enjoy working with?
I am currently finding multi areas of people. I do corporate work, executive coaching, performance training, working a lot with artists in different levels. I think I just kind of naturally gravitate to that. But I like the people that are asking the really hard questions. The ontological approach I really love because it, like, I think most time when we go see a therapist, we go see a psychologist, we are looking for them. They're a consultant, really. I need your wisdom to help me fix where the ontological approach is, you've got all the answers for you. I just have to ask you questions that allow you to see your own vision of you that you'd like, and removing the boundaries of it.
I like that.
Because as you get older, like you just there's more at risk, right? Every time you move up, it gets riskier. Whereas like a 16-year-old, he'll try anything. He's got nothing to lose. So it's kind of embracing maybe that inner child a little bit and going, what's the fear associated with your goal? What is the thing you're looking for? What are the boundaries? And what I try and offer is a shift in the observer. For example, like we could both look at that candle, but my view is much different than yours. Same candle, I'm just looking at it differently. But if I could get you to see it from my perspective, you might be able to see something I can't out of it. So it's moving your observer around. Of one of the models we use it's called the OAR model, OAR, observer, action, result. And so what the natural thing is say you want to do anything. Well, you're first going to start as an observer. I'm observing that I'd like to do this thing. Then we're going to get into an action of how to do the thing. And then we're going to look at the result. And if the result is unfavorable, what usually happens, the cycle of human behavior puts us back to the action. So we do a different action and usually get a different result, but usually it's still, there's a miss there. It's because the key is really, you've got to go back to the observer. You need to look at the whole completely rather than staying in a small frame of mind. And so the ontological approach is about moving all of the elements and letting someone see their life for what they can be. But that's led me to really working with a lot of interesting people in a short amount of time, and getting a lot of really crazy questions. And I'm coming up with better questions, and like, it's really interesting.
So you're pushing each other.
Absolutely. And that's
the best.
That is the idea. It's like, we're just sitting talking. Well, what do you think? I don't know. What do you think? Let's talk about it. Is that, and when you find people that are open-minded, man, there's no limit. You can come up with the wildest thing, and within a short amount of time, you've got an actionable plan that usually, like, me and my client will have co-created. Here's this crazy thing. Cool. Let's look at all the ways you could do it. That feels like the way that feels true to me. But from the client's perspective, great. Well, let's come up with an actionable plan to go get it. And then they go get it. And then, like, I can't believe how many clients are like, I got the thing I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how rewarding does that feel to you?
It's amazing. I still can't believe how much power there is in still, like, a lot of times I just listen to people. There's been sessions where an hour has gone by and I've maybe asked 2 questions. That was really hard at first, of just learning that the power is not in what I'm bringing. It's just, I'm like stopping traffic so that you can go think for a little bit about what you want to do. And then, like, when you get stuck here, I might go, have you thought of this? And that sends you up here for a little bit. And then you come back down and we go, well, what if you looked over here? And you go look over here and you find what's right for you.
That gives me goosebumps.
No, I mean, that's it,
Yeah,
right?
and it's right.
Same as what you do. You're finding the solutions others have failed at. Because fortunately, most of my clients now have some basic emotional language. They've all done some therapy. They've all done some type of building block.
And can reflect.
Yeah. And what really drove me to the coaching side of things, like I thought about getting into therapy. I'm a Jordan Peterson fan, so I wanted to do clinical psychology. But what drove me to coaching is there's kind of no limits. I don't get into therapy lanes. I don't get into psychology lanes. There's people that are much better at that. But what the coaching allows me to do is, like, we're always looking at, no matter how you show up at this particular day, you're not broken. You don't need fixing. You are 100%. How do you move from where you are today in your current state forward? Whereas my experience with therapy is, like, we got to go back and we got to, there's a lot of value in it. And I think people need to do that deep work, but I still got to go, where do I go from
forward?
today?
Yeah.
Like I've even had clients go, I didn't want to get into the coaching thing because I had to do the therapy. And it was like, you can do all of it, and probably should, when you look at people that are really performing high, especially at athletes. Like, look how many coaches an athlete has in their life, and therapists and doctors, because that's the only way you can do it. But as regular human beings, we're supposed to be, nope, I'm good. Got it all. I know everything. I'm good. That's kind of our attitude. But, like, I mean, look at your Michael Jordans of the world. Like, they work with a lot of people to help them achieve their best. And I almost think something gets lost, like, after school, when you're just mixing with a lot of people and you're talking about unique ideas, and just don't push anymore. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I agree with that, but I'm also thinking, okay, if I'm listening right now and I'm connecting with you with these goosebumps, probably like a lot of people listening, how can I make you part of my team? Like, how can people access you and reach out to you and ask questions?
You send up a signal in the sky on the bat phone. No, I can be reached through my website, the Mirror Mind Connection. You can probably find me on social media somewhere. I actually don't go to social media.
Just go to the Mirror Mind Connection.
Yeah, just come to the website, and we'll connect with Press Connect.
Okay, so they can come find you at the Mirror
Mind Connection is my website. Click on connect there. That'll send you to an email thing. Yeah.
And speaking of morning musts, I want a PSA for all y'all out there, because every once in a while, Louis will drop into the Broadway scene down in Nashville.
Yes. Come see me.
It would be awesome. But what is a must not request?
A must not request. Oh my God.
You get so annoyed playing or something.
I think that changes. I think depending on who you ask, that would be true. But
for you,
do you remember the scene? And you probably were too busy in school to know your Star Wars history, but when
never seen it.
Where Luke he's talking with Yoda, and Yoda is so sick of his questions that Yoda just dies. Do you remember that scene?
I didn't see it, but I'll say yes.
I thought you were kidding.
No, like, haven't seen one Star Wars. Haven't seen one Harry Potter.
Why do you hurt me with your words? How can you have missed the classic movies?
I don't know.
Oh my God.
And then when I do see a movie, sometimes I forget. I don't know. I don't know what that part of my brain does.
You don't know basic Star Wars?
Nope.
Okay, so it's the story of a young warrior, let's say, and he's trying to train his mind to be great. Okay. And he has this little green man that is essentially the master of all masters, okay? And Luke goes onto this planet to learn the lessons, and essentially he's always asking questions, and the master's going, do more doing, less talking, more things. He's always got these quips, and he kind of talks backwards, which is interesting. But eventually Luke asks these questions where Yoda just dies because he just can't handle.
Are you dying right now?
What's that?
Are you dying right now?
No, no.
Oh,
I'm just saying that's how I feel about Wagon Wheel.
oh,
I have
yes.
I feel like I am maybe 2 wagon wheels away from just
Uh-oh.
dying.
Okay.
I can't take it.
All right.
The other one is man, I feel like a woman is just way over requested. I've got maybe 1 or 2 Heads Carolinas left in me.
Okay.
That's going to be
okay. So what's a must request? What do you want people requesting more of?
Oh, nothing that they'd enjoy. It's just, yeah. No, I want to play like Toto and Steely Dan and stuff, and nobody wants to hear that. It's no, honestly, just I'll play whatever you want. I still can't believe anybody wants to hear me play drums anymore.
Well, and I heard you sing the last time I was down
That's
there.
not true.
It was really good.
God.
Oh my God.
Singing is something I have started to attempt in the last year, and I'm still not very good at it, and it is terrifying for me, but it's like it's a skill, right? Back to complacency, like push. Dude, this, and it was like every time there was something come up that I had to sing, it was so terrifying. I was like, I gotta dig into this. And so now I end up singing 3 or 4 songs a night, which they are average at best. Some below average, but I've started to get fearless with it.
Good.
I will sing anything. I don't care anymore. I'll just do it.
You
put $20 in the bucket. I'm singing it. I don't care. Yeah.
So what's something you want to leave everyone with? What's your message that you want the world to hear?
Man,
I feel like a woman.
Nicer to yourself. What do you want the world to hear?
I want the world to hear what Louis thinks. Be nicer to yourself.
Be nice to yourself. Everybody beats their own ass, man. It's like life's hard enough as it is. Don't beat yourself up. And I feel like most of our problems we go through are hurdles we put in front of ourselves. Literally. You know what I mean? Like, God is good. Life is good. It's going to be hard, but so what?
Have fun with it.
Yeah, have fun with it.
I like it.
Be nice. Be cool. Rule number 1, be cool.
Be cool.
Rule number 2, if rule number 1 doesn't apply, remember rule number 1.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, I think you're going to be a fan favorite. We are going to have you back.
I love that.
So thank you so much for coming on.
You keep bringing really expensive wine, and I'll show up anytime.
Let's drink more. Mine's been empty for a while.
Oh, okay. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Right. Bye. Toodaloo.